Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. At least 11 people have been killed in Russian strikes in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. These strikes come after Donald Trump threatened large-scale Russian sanctions as he says Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he wants peace as soon as possible, as the Ukrainian foreign minister says the US is essential for peace. Hamas has issued a video showing a male Israeli hostage as Arab nations meet in Cairo, adopting a plan for Gaza to counter Trump's Riviera proposal. Meanwhile, Houthi rebels have threatened to resume attacks on Israel in 4 days if aid is not allowed back into Gaza. Greece's ruling party have survived a confidence vote following protests amid renewed uproar over the deadly 2023 Tempe train crash. More than 200 people have reportedly been killed in clashes between Syrian security forces and Assad loyalists. The government fighters are accused of executing dozens of Alawites. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says there will be no tariffs imposed on the United States after Trump paused many duties on the border nation. Actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa died of natural causes a week apart, according to a New Mexico medical investigator. Russia has launched a series of deadly strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure and military sites using precision-guided munitions and drones, while Ukraine has repelled multiple assaults along the front lines. For the first time, Kyiv deployed French-supplied Mirage 2000 fighter jets in combat, downing 134 Russian aerial targets. Meanwhile, Russian strikes in Donetsk have killed at least 11 people and wounded at least 30 others as the conflict escalates further. Meanwhile, Ukraine is intensifying its push for peace, holding high-level discussions with US President Donald Trump's team. President Volodymyr Zelensky says multiple talks have taken place, focusing on ending the war and ensuring long-term security.
Сьогодні увесь день на різних рівнях триває найбільш інтенсивна робота з командою президента Трампа за весь час. Багато дзвінків. Тематика зрозуміла, мир якнайшвидше, безпека якнадійніше. Україна налаштована максимально конструктивно.
But as Ukraine works towards diplomacy, Russia continues its brutal offensive. In a major missile attack, Moscow once again targeted Ukraine's power grid and civilian infrastructure. Zelensky says these strikes show Russia's complete disregard for peace efforts.
Сьогодні цей удар Росії по нашій енергосистемі, по наших цивільних об'єктах відбувся так буденно для Росії, так підло і так цинічно, як і завжди. Наче взагалі немає жодних намагань України і світу закінчити цю війну.
To the Middle East, and Hamas has issued a video of hostage Matan Angrest begging to be set free in an apparent effort to rally Israel for a deal amid an impasse in negotiations. In the video, the 21-year-old captive IDF soldier taken from a tank at Nahal Oz during battles there on October the 7th, 2023, says he has been held for 511 days, indicating it was likely filmed last week. Pleading to US President Trump to secure his release, Angrest in this video says that Trump is the only one who can influence Netanyahu. Let's take a listen.
נחטפתי ב-7 באוקטובר ממוצב נחל עוז, 511 יום בשבי של החמאס. התעכבה כל הסיפור של העסקה, שחרור החטופים, באמת. הרגשה פה שצה"ל ומדינת ישראל, ממשלה, הפקירו אותנו כאן בשבי, תקופה ארוכה מאוד. ואנחנו החטופים מתחילים לאבד תקווה. אנחנו לא רואים את הסוף. לא רואים את הסוף של הדברים, של כל הסיפור הזה. אני רוצה להגיד לצה"ל, אתם לא תצליחו להחזיר אותנו. לא תצליחו להחזיר אותנו בכוח צבאי. הדרך היחידה להחזיר אותנו היא רק בעסקה. ולעשות את השלב השני. שמעתי על שלבי העסקה, וזה באמת לא מעניין אותנו, החטופים. אנחנו רק רוצים לחזור הביתה. מערכה שנייה, מערכה שלישית, מערכה ראשונה. תשחררו את כל החטופים, תסיימו את הסיפור הזה, ויאללה, כל אחד ילך לדרכו. בבקשה ממכם, אני מתחנן, תחזירו אותנו בחיים, לא בארון גבורה. לא קל, אין שמש, הקור של החורף משפיע, קשה. האוכל, ההתייחסות פה היא כמו לחייל, לא כמו לחטוף רגיל, אזרח שנחטף. אני מבקש ממכם, האנשים שיצאו הביתה, אל תשאירו אותנו פה להירקב בשבי. תילחמו עלינו, אתם יודעים מה אנחנו עברנו פה, ועדיין עוברים. אני רוצה בהזדמנות הזאת לפנות לטראמפ ולהגיד לך שאני מתחנן אליך. תחזיר את כל החטופים, אתה היחיד שיש לו כוח להשפיע על נתניהו ועל הממשלה. ובאמת, לדחוף לעסקה הזאת, תעשה כל מאמץ כדי להחזיר אותנו הביתה, כמה שיותר במהרה. אני רוצה לפנות לרמטכ"ל ולמפקדי צה"ל. המחויבות שלכם
The US began holding direct talks with Hamas in recent weeks aimed largely at securing the release of 5 American Israeli hostages. Those negotiations have yet to bear fruit, leading US President Donald Trump to issue an ultimatum demanding that the terror group immediately release all hostages or face destruction. Meanwhile, the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation adopted the Arab League's counter-proposal to US President Donald Trump's plan to take over Gaza and displace its residents.
شديد الإيجابية، وهو أن الاجتماع الوزاري الطارئ لمنظمة التعاون الإسلامي أن يعتمد الخطة المصرية التي أصبحت الآن خطة عربية لإعادة الإعمار وتبني أيضا واعتماد كل مخرجات قمة القاهرة الطارئة، هو أمر شديد الإيجابية لأن هذه الخطة الآن أصبحت خطة عربية، خطة إسلامية. الخطوة القادمة إن شاء الله أن تكون الخطة خطة دولية.
Meanwhile, Houthi rebels have threatened to resume naval attacks if Israel doesn't end Gaza aid freeze in 4 days. On Sunday, Israel announced it was blocking deliveries to Gaza until Palestinian militant group Hamas accepted its terms for an extension of the ceasefire. The Houthis, who control much of the Arabian Peninsula's poorest country, fired scores of drones and missiles at Israeli-linked and other shipping in the Red Sea during the Gaza war, until calling a halt when a ceasefire started in January. The Houthi threat came days after the United States redesignated the Yemeni group as a foreign terrorist organisation and sanctioned 7 of its senior figures.
إذا استمر العدو الإسرائيلي بعد 4 أيام في منع دخول المساعدات إلى قطاع غزة، واستمر في الإغلاق التام للمعابر ومنع دخول الغذاء والدواء إلى قطاع غزة، فإننا سنعود لاستئناف عملياتنا البحرية ضد العدو الإسرائيلي.
We'll now take a look at the latest updates coming in from across the Indo-Pacific region. New Zealand's top spy has warned of the security risks posed by China's growing influence in the Pacific and said his agency would ramp up scrutiny of the Cook Islands after the nation deepened ties with Beijing. Security Intelligence Service Director General Andrew Hampton said the focus of Pacific nations on economic and transnational crime issues had opened the door for China to sign strategic deals with them that linked economic and security cooperation. US President Donald Trump has once again criticised India's trade policies, calling it a very high tariff nation and warning that reciprocal tariffs will come into effect on April the 2nd. Speaking at an Oval Office event on Thursday, Trump described the upcoming levies as the big one among the many duties his administration has planned. The Sri Lankan Navy on Friday said that it had arrested 14 Indian fishermen and seized the fishing boat for allegedly poaching in the country's territorial waters. The Navy arrested the Indian fishermen during a special operation conducted in the sea area south of Mannar on Thursday night. The seized boat and Indian fishermen were brought to Mannar and will be handed over to the fisheries inspector of Mannar for onward legal proceedings, the Navy said in a statement. Greece's centre-right government survived a no-confidence vote on Friday following mounting pressure over a deadly 2023 train crash, the country's worst rail disaster. Protests erupted demanding political accountability, with opposition lawmakers from centre-left, leftist and independent groups arguing that the government had lost its popular support. This came just a week after hundreds of thousands took to the streets seeking justice for the 57 victims, mostly students, in one of the largest protests Greece has seen in years. The opposition accused Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis' government of failing to address serious railway safety issues, avoiding responsibility and covering up evidence. Despite the criticism, the government, which was re-elected after the 2023 crash and holds a 156-seat majority in the 300-member parliament, denied any wrongdoing. The no-confidence motion was defeated with 157 votes against it. Outside Parliament, tensions escalated as hooded demonstrators clashed with police, throwing petrol bombs while police used tear gas to disperse them. Authorities reported that 61 arrests were made. A judicial investigation into the tragedy is still underway. Fighters siding with Syria's new government stormed several villages near the country's coast, killing dozens of men in response to recent attacks on government security forces by loyalists of ousted President Bashar al-Assad. The ongoing clashes between the two sides have marked the worst violence since Assad's government was toppled in early December by insurgent groups led by the Islamist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. More than 200 people have been killed since the fighting broke out, according to the Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Following this, Syria's leader Ahmed al-Sharaa urges insurgents from toppled President Assad's Alawites to lay down their arms before it's too late. Let's take a listen.
وإنكم بهذا قد اقترفتم ذنبا عظيما لا يغتفر وقد جاءكم الرد الذي لا صبر لكم عليه فبادروا إلى تسليم سلاحكم وأنفسكم قبل فوات الأوان.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has taken a more calculated approach to President Trump's 25% tariffs on imports, which were set to take effect this week. In a news conference, Sheinbaum pledged to protect Mexican interests but delayed retaliatory tariffs until Sunday, allowing time to negotiate with the US. During a phone call with Trump, Sheinbaum persisted in urging him to back down, eventually securing a waiver on the tariffs for Mexican imports until April the 2nd. Trump acknowledged the waiver, calling it a gesture of respect from Sheinbaum, while reaffirming the strong US-Mexico relationship. Sheinbaum's diplomatic strategy seems to have paid off, securing a temporary relief for Mexico.
Nosotros no tenemos impuestos a los productos que llegan de Estados Unidos porque tenemos un tratado comercial. Entonces, si nosotros no le ponemos impuestos a lo que llega de Estados Unidos, pues Estados Unidos tampoco le pondrá impuestos a lo que llega de México, porque es la reciprocidad.
Putting an end to more than a week's worth of mystery into the death of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman, the chief medical investigator has said that Gene died of natural causes probably a week after his wife passed away. The couple were found in their home after neighbourhood security conducted a welfare check and saw their bodies on the ground through the window. As per reports, neither body showed any signs of trauma nor any indication of carbon monoxide poisoning, which had been an initial suggestion. The investigator has said that Hackman had significant heart disease and ultimately that's what resulted in his death, adding that he had chronic high blood pressure. Let's listen in.
autopsy examination, and a full-body postmortem CT examination demonstrated no acute findings of internal or external trauma and showed severe heart disease, including multiple surgical procedures involving the heart, evidence of prior heart attacks, and severe changes of the kidneys due to chronic high blood pressure.
Staying in North America, and a South Carolina man has become the first US death row inmate to be executed by firing squad in 15 years. 67-year-old Brad Sigmund was convicted of brutally murdering his ex-girlfriend's parents, David and Gladys Lark, in 2001. His attack was part of a failed attempt to kidnap his ex-girlfriend by taking her out, killing both her and himself. The execution took place at 6:05 local time. 3 volunteer prison staff executed Sigmund using rifles from 15 feet away, with all shots fired simultaneously. Sigmund chose the firing squad over the electrical chair and lethal injection, fearing that the electric chair would cook him alive, and pentobarbital, the drug used for lethal injections, could cause a painful death by flooding his lungs with blood.
The capital punishment sentence of Brad Keith Sigmund was carried out tonight pursuant to the order of the South Carolina Supreme Court and in accordance with state law. The execution was performed at 6:05:50 by a 3-person firing squad and he was pronounced dead by a physician at 6:08 p.m.
Now to South America, and 6 people have died and hundreds have been evacuated in the Argentine port city of Bahia Blanca as torrential rains flooded homes and hospitals, destroyed roads and forced authorities to cut power. 8 hours of non-stop rain left the city of 350,000 people largely underwater and forced authorities to evacuate the Jose Pena hospital. Bahia Blanca's airport was closed until further notice, and officials cut off part of the power supply to reduce the risk of electric shocks. As per reports, around 1,000 people were evacuated to safety in the city, around 600 kilometres south of the capital, Buenos Aires. The provincial government said it was sending helicopters, canoes, ambulances and trucks bearing food, water and equipment to the stricken city. It remains on alert from the Meteorological Service for new storms. After 9 months stranded aboard the International Space Station, NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore are finally set to return to Earth. The duo originally launched aboard Boeing's Starliner for what was meant to be a 10-day mission, but a series of technical failures left them unable to return. Now NASA has confirmed their return on March the 16th aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon. A relief crew will launch next week to facilitate their homecoming. Originally, Williams and Wilmore were scheduled to return in February, but NASA opted to bring them back with Crew 9 instead. Meanwhile, Crew 10 is set to launch on March the 12th from the Kennedy Space Center, carrying 4 astronauts aboard the Endurance capsule after delays in the new spacecraft's construction. Their long-awaited return marks the end of one of NASA's most unexpected space mission extensions in recent history. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un recently inspected a nuclear-powered submarine project, highlighting the country's naval growth. State media reported that Kim visited shipyards involved in building advanced warships and submarines. Strengthening the Navy is a top priority for North Korea's defence. This submarine project is part of North Korea's strategy to increase its regional military presence. Once finished, the submarine could launch ballistic missiles, threatening regional security. Military experts believe the project is a response to growing US and South Korean naval exercises, which North Korea views as provocation. Kim emphasised the need for a nuclear-powered naval force, saying modernising the fleet is crucial for defence. While no completion date has been given, this development raises concerns for neighbouring countries and the global community. Pope Francis expressed gratitude to his supporters for their prayers on Thursday through a breathless audio message that still managed to uplift the spirits of his faithful amid growing concerns over the 88-year-old pontiff's health. The Pope's pre-recorded message was played on loudspeaker at St. Peter's Square in the Vatican ahead of the evening recitation of the Rosary Prayer. It was the first time his followers has heard his voice since his hospitalisation nearly 3 weeks ago. Although the Pope has shared written messages from the hospital and the Vatican, has provided twice daily updates on his condition, he has not been seen in photos or videos since February the 14th, when he was hospitalised following a series of lung-related health issues, including bronchitis and double pneumonia. That is all we have time for, but we'll continue to bring you more of the latest international news very soon.